Hi everyone, welcome back to Babylon Irons. So we've obviously just seen the final results, seen the game, 2-1. So a couple of things that we did that we said that we hadn't done in the previous one. We scored for the first time in 4 games to Turf Moor. That is also our first win in a while at Turf Moor because obviously we haven't scored in the past 4. And we've managed to sustain Burnley's terrible record and terrible start at Turf Moor now with 7 defeats in the Premier League this season at home. And I think that's their 9th in a row at Turf Moor in the Premier League, going back to when they was last in the league. So, Sloth, 2-1 win. That's great. However, let's get dig into the game and let's start off with the first piece. Before we get into everything else, let's start off with the lineups. And I think the lineup was pretty much what we expected. However, we see Danny Ings starting up top. So kind of what were your thoughts when you initially saw that lineup?
All good apart from Danny Ings, really. I just, I hate sounding like a stuck record. And I hate sounding like I don't hate the guy. I just hate him in a West Ham shirt. It's hard to separate when you're criticizing him so much. It's hard, I think, to separate those two things from sounding like you're just trying to go in and dogpile on the guy. And I don't want to do that. But
we said the same on our preview show, didn't we? That we don't want to have a go and want him to do well. However, it's just we've not seen a thing from him in a West Ham shirt.
And he was. Yeah, obviously that was the bone of contention. We'll get onto his performance in a bit.
Yeah.
But I looked at it and I thought, right, we should have enough to beat them. And, beat them comfortably. Boy, was I wrong.
So obviously Danny Ings started. So we kind of maybe thought we know where this is maybe going to go in terms of performance. I don't think he necessarily started too badly, in all honesty. He actually seemed to be linking play a bit, but then, however, as it kind of went on, it was a bit poor. And in the opening salvo, in the opening 2 minutes, we had a brilliant opportunity where Paqueta has lofted a lovely little ball into a channel for Soucek. And had he had the wherewithal as to where he was, what was going on around him, he could have brought it down and just tapped it over to Kudus, who would have basically had an empty net to start. And that would have been the absolute dream start, the start that we were talking about in the preview show, that had we got that, Burnley would have probably crumbled and he would have gone on to have won comfortably. However, that moment passed us by. And that seemed to be the only real bright spot in an otherwise turgid and horrible first 45 minutes of football.
We just looked so slow. We looked so sloppy on the ball. We gave it away consistently. Our play was really laboured as well. Like some of the stuff passing around the back. I'm not going to try and sound like, Yadar, who sits at the back and it goes, all the passing around the back. But like, it just looked so laboured. And you know what Burnley are going to do with their sort of pace that they have in the side. And when you have players like Soucek, who's not a pacey player, and someone like Koleosho pressing him, it makes it really hard. So you get this sort of press from Burnley, but we weren't good enough on the ball to be doing anything about it. When we did get the ball or pass it forward to Paqueta gave the ball away a lot. And look, he did some very good things, but he gave the ball away so much today. And I can see why some fans criticize him as much as they do, because it was painful at times. And, I love him. And I thought to that final 30 minutes, I thought he was excellent. But it was just the 60 minutes before that, he was diabolical in terms of losing possession for us and leading to our own downfall. But it was the
really dodgy moment in the first half, didn't we? He tried to I love the fact that he trusts his strength and his ability to hold off players and roll around them. However, to do that about 10 yards from the edge of your own area was almost catastrophic. Because Mdwani, I can't pronounce his name completely wrong. I know I have had a brilliant opportunity, and he was a stud's length away from tapping that into the back of the net. And it's like you say, moments like that where we all love Paqueta, but he has those moments where his decision making, you sit there and go, why are you doing that there? Do it in the opposition half. Don't do it right on the edge of our half where we've got Emerson and so on really pushing up high, because once you lose the ball, we're in almost no man's land and we're almost caught out very early. And there's constantly, I thought they just played for our midfield so easy in that first half. Alvarez, for me, I felt was trying to make an impact. But once he picked up that yellow card, he was pretty much on a tightrope and couldn't really get near anyone. And I thought Soucek and Ward-Prowse were almost non-existent at times.
I think you're right there. I thought James Ward-Prowse was anonymous today. And we kept doing that thing that I really hate, where we just, our set pieces were just sort of either short ones to the nearest man, or just like totally.
I got criticised for that on Twitter because I mentioned about the terrible again. However, I admit, they've been brilliant in the sense of they've won off points and got goals, but you have to.
Today they weren't. And
what I was kind of getting at more is the fact that we have such a large quantity, and yet we have at times so little variation. It's much like when we had Snodgrass, when we used to just absolutely ask him just to lever it into that front post with everything you've got, with dip and swerve. And there was kind of real no finesse in what you were doing as a delivery. You're not really trying to pick anyone out. You're just going, everyone bundle into that area, try and get a flick on, because if you get something on it, you're likely to divert the ball with power into net. And it just seemed like that was the only direction of set pieces. It was the same thing time and time again. And it was frustrating because you've got someone the quality of James Ward-Prowse, and you're just sitting there going, how can you have this much quantity? Well, the quantity of set pieces that we have, and have so little output in terms of in this game as to any real kind of creativity or any kind of moments on goal.
Well, it kind of goes back to one of my biggest bugbears from today's game, where it just sort of it seemed like there was no plan to how we play in terms of, we made Burnley look the better side today. And they outplayed us, but it wasn't because, they sat back and frustrated us, or they, were working really hard and, pressing all our players consistently. We just gave the ball away. We created so many of our own problems, and the players that we were playing didn't suit the style that we wanted to play. And you cannot have that. You cannot have that at a Premier League level when you're playing someone like Danny Ings and he's totally anonymous up top, but then James Ward-Prowse is anonymous in the midfield, and he
don't seem to get that balance right with him. We just seem to, one week we have that balance right where he's maybe the more forward of that three that seem to play there, and then another week he seems to be the deeper. And it just seems we seem to be fluctuating between putting him ahead or behind.
It's because when we play with Danny Ings, it's like playing with 10 men. And I don't just mean he is the problem. No. The problem is unless we have a striker who suits our specific way of playing, and they can link up with the midfield, they can drop deep and they can start attacks, and then they can break. The striker's anonymous. You're effectively playing with 10 men. And James Ward-Prowse plays so advanced at times that, players just go right past him. Yeah. It's really hard to kind of explain to people that when you're looking at the work rate James Ward-Prowse gets through, the distance he covers, it doesn't mean that someone's had a great game. It's the double-edged sort of stats where it's like, they may have worked really hard and covered a lot of ground, but if they're beaten, and they leave holes everywhere for players like Sander Berge to expose and then sort of lead the midfield forward, or win a midfield battle.
He was quite. I thought he was impressive today.
I thought he looked pretty tidy.
Yeah, and it was the area that we said that we really should be looking to dominate, wasn't it? And Berge was, fair play to him. He stood up. There's absolute quality in there. Unfortunately, he's not surrounded by players that maybe are completely at his level, which is why they end up being on the end of the result that they were. And, Artel makes a fair point. Ings was relatively cut adrift with little to no service. However, I did think at times he did get on the ball. He did try and make things happen. But for me, he lacks that urgency and that pace as well to cause any trouble. When we get on to how that changed in the second half,
I don't want to get into another discussion about strikers and a lack of service, because how many times have we done that over the past few? And it's I don't know if it's just getting to the point where we actually needed a homegrown striker to come in to expose how deeply flawed our reliance on one type of player is, or one individual, particularly, Antonio. We're so reliant on that sort of player that if we're moving Bowen into a forward position to replicate a similar thing as that centre forward style, then it just completely capitulates. If those two are gone, then we don't have a proven player, and we just try and shoehorn Danny Ings in.
And I think there's the point here as well, as Artel's saying, is that Mubama's willingness to run and press with energy. It's the same thing we get with Bowen. He maybe doesn't always do those most natural striker kind of roles, but he does the other aspects, like that willingness to press and the willingness to kind of run and to kind of make those things. You don't necessarily get that from Ings because he's used to playing in a two, and he just hasn't adapted to the one man up top. And I feel bad for saying it, but it is kind of true. He's kind of stolen a living at West Ham, unfortunately. Danny Ings, I think he's got 3 goals in his time at West Ham. Mubama has 1 goal. Arguably, he would have had 3 had he not had 2 taken off him. But Mubama, in much less time, would have the same amount of goals as Danny Ings, who's on 125 grand.
I'm going to be harder. I'm going to be harder than you are. I'm going to say he's the worst signing pound for pound that we've ever made. Like in Premier League,
Arthur wants to poke the bear sloth. What do you talk about?
It's right though. It's just, if we're so reliant on one type of way to play, we need the players for it. And
it's frustrating we've got, when we're playing Paqueta so wide, and especially in that first half when you see how ineffective Ward-Prowse and obviously Soucek, but even Alvarez was bombing ahead of them at one point. I think he was one stage the furthest player forward, trying to stop the ball from going out for a goal kick and trying to win a corner. And it's great that there was that rotation in that sense, if we want to be positive about it. However, our deepest player was the player looking to go out there and try and force some play, when we're meant to have Soucek is meant to be that forward-thinking, kind of getting in the area kind of player. And Ward-Prowse, obviously, the way he has started the season, you would expect that from him as well. And we didn't see that. And it was I thought, a really bad performance in that first half from those two in particular. I was really disappointed in what they were serving in midfield, because we just got bypassed consistently, constantly.
It was the worst 45 minutes I've seen from a West Ham side in a long time. Like, it was painful. And, I think there wasn't anyone who came out of that first half and I thought, they've had a good game. I think fair play to their left winger Koleosho. I thought he had Soufal on toast, and he was very unlucky to not get a penalty. I mean, I had a bit of discussion.
I'm with you on why it's not a penalty, by the way. I can understand why people would have said it was a penalty. However, I completely back the ref's decision and what you're about to say.
I'll explain why I don't feel like it was a penalty, but I feel like it was more of a penalty than the one that got given, if that makes sense. Because
it kind of felt that it's because if he didn't give that one, I have to now give him one.
Yeah, and it was a strange one, because for me, I think, Soufal doesn't move to tackle the player. His legs are there, and you can see him plant his leg, but there's no movement to take out the player. Now, it's a contact sport. Contact in the box is not a foul. Now, I know that people will probably say, if that was a West Ham player, you would want the penalty.
Oh, absolutely. Well, no, I'd want a penalty because I'd have my West Ham glasses on. But
there's a difference between what should be a penalty and what shouldn't be a penalty. And this is just an instance where someone has tried to win a penalty. They've knocked it past you, and then they've gone over. Now he can stay on his feet. This is my biggest argument. He can stay on his feet, and Soucek cannot chop his legs off. He cannot move.
He could have avoided that contact. He actually continues his run at the player. That's how I viewed it. That's how, when they looked at it and said it's not a penalty, that's the way that I viewed that. That's how they've deemed it, because the player has knocked it past Soucek. He could continue his run. And what he's done is he's calculated that I might not get onto it, so I'm going to initiate contact. And he kind of drives at Soucek rather than goes with the direction of the ball in which the way he tapped it. So
it's clever play. It's clever attacking play if it's your player, but it's not a penalty, and it shouldn't be given as a penalty, in my opinion, and my interpretation of the laws as well. It's the sort of thing that Antonio does every single game. And we see given, and sorry, we see not given for Antonio.
Antonio doesn't get it. It's because of his size. And his bulk.
And look, there's no. I'm not saying that referees don't give that sort of challenge, but what I'm saying is, I personally don't think it's a pen, because I think you're buying the contact. You're initiating the contact. And contact isn't a foul.
I think the ref was trying to let contact go in the game.
It's a contact sport, and contact in the box does not make something a foul. If you go over a leg, then if it's been planted and sent towards you, if you've directed the leg to take you out, that's a different matter. But a planted leg and someone clattering into it and going over is something different. I personally thought he could have stayed on his feet and he could have chased the ball. If he goes down after and, he's knocked off balance, he can't continue on his feet, that's a different matter. You could argue that's a penalty. But I think
a way to look at it is, had what happened, because with Kudus in this first half, he got clipped, but got up, tried to play the ball. As he played it, he then got intercepted. I think maybe, as you're saying, if it would have gone in the same way, then I think it would happen. Obviously, Soucek does plant his leg, and he does kind of put it slightly back. So you could say that had the ref been in a different mood or even VAR, they could have easily given it. We've seen it given. However, I just think it's just that slight movement from the player towards Soucek as opposed to towards the ball, which is what sold them the idea that he was playing for the penalty as opposed to actually legitimate contact that results in a foul. And I think that's the only way that we can describe
the frustrating thing. Frustrating thing is, from a Burnley point of view, I can see why they're frustrated and not getting it, because we see these decisions given all the time, and we see these decisions go against us when it's Antonio, and we don't get them. But we just want consistency, and I think if you give that foul, you have to make sure that if it's contact in the box, you have a blanket law. If someone's foot takes out the attacking player, then it's a penalty. But you can't. For me, I think he can stay on his feet, and maybe I'm just being a bit, Yadar old school sort of. Oh, that's contact. I played rugby for years, and if that was me, I'd have been embarrassed to fall down there. I think he's not thrown himself down, but he's bought the contact. And
I think that's the problem. I think we've seen players in the past, like Harry Kane is the expert of buying contact, and by and large he gets it because it's just a matter of the team that he plays for as well probably has a bit of a help here. But I just think it was one of those ones that I'm not surprised. If it had been given, I would not have been surprised at all. However, I'm with you as to why it wasn't given. And before we get into the one that was given, which I think was a lot weaker when it came to giving it, I think it's probably fair to say, the first 45 minutes, was bad. And, as he says, worryingly, we've said this a lot, that's the worst 45 minutes I've seen from us. And, it doesn't always look like it necessarily improves. We've seen that in the last few games, we've got the result. However, the performance maybe isn't still quite there. That could be a confidence thing. However, it's still not quite there. And then I think it was one of those main reasons is, as Richard says, we're unbalanced in the midfield. Paqueta on the left today, he kept trying to come in. I think the only times we ever looked like having anything in that first half were the moments where we could get Kudus in the game, when we could bring in Paqueta and they were driving with the ball. However, that unbalance is just so all over the shop in that the spaces or the kind of, the gaps between players is not enough passes. We saw with Burnley, one player would go forward, one player would drop. That proper positional play in which they were always making angles for a pass. And I think Arteta always talks about, when you're talking about making passes, it's every pass has to be on a diagonal because it's direct, because he's always going forward. And we're always kind of sideways backwards. We don't really seem to do that diagonal. The first half ended 0-0. Could only get better. And Sloth, before we move on, what position did you play rugby? Because there's loads of chatter going on asking. Most thinking that you may have been a winger.
Yeah, I was a back. Yeah, I was very fleet-footed. I'm very quick. I played a couple of games for London Irish, and I got a bit of a back injury and got dropped. So them's the way it goes.
Yeah. But you wouldn't be here now, Sloth. So, everything has a silver lining, right?
What do you do?
Oh, yeah, I know. Sitting here talking about West Ham. Oh, the joys. But obviously, so, that first half was appalling, really. I would go as far as to say it's embarrassing. We was talking about if our aspirations are to be where we want to be, which is in that kind of top 7, top 6, that first half, it isn't something you would aspire to, and especially against a team who is bottom of the league. Again, have to give credit to Burnley. They did actually turn up and they did perform well in that first half. And then we come out for the second half, no subs. Can't say I'm surprised. Standard. And right from the off, Burnley go down the end. Again, attack down that side, then penalty. And this one was much, much lighter, I think, than the other one. This one I could have easily felt the ref would have said no, because it's just minimal contact and what have you.
It's minimal contact, but he stands on his foot. And I think, if you're not giving one, I think you'd be very hard done by if you didn't get that one. And I know that's not how it should work. It's not how football should work. Oh, we had loads of soft ones that didn't go for us. Like that's not how football should work. But I would have felt Burnley would have been hard done by if they'd not got a penalty today.
Yeah, I think after the first incident, I think it was almost inevitable. Should there be, a
another
shot like that, then it was going to get given. And they rightly deserved. They were 1-0 up. They were vastly in control of us. We didn't really seem to have any kind of clue. We were making loads of silly mistakes. There was an opportunity where I think Ward-Prowse from a throw-in had a bad touch and then kind of plays a bit of an awkward pass to Aged, then holds it too long, gets caught out, and Ward-Prowse kind of gets back, and Anduni has a really good shot at the near post, saved. And there was just a couple of those moments in that first half where we had those consistent moments where like we may get caught here for a second, and we wasn't even really attacking. What did seem to happen though is Paqueta seemed to float more in field, and then came the substitutes. So in 60 minutes, we saw I think around about 60 minutes. We have a relatively, early subs. Divine Mubama came on and Saeed Benrahma came on. Now, some people took it wrong on what I said on Twitter, because I said, fair play to Moyes, he brought on Mubama. And also, you'd have started the point as well, he had no choice. He does have a choice. He could have not brought him on, and he could have brought on Cornet. So you have to, as much as I don't think it's divine intervention, a little bit of nice little fun, or kind of a master stroke or a master class in the sub. I think he got bailed out by Mubama, really. However, you've also got to acknowledge he did bring him on when he brought him on, and those two changes, in particular one, had a very positive impact on how we pressed from the front and how we we went on from that stage. We still weren't great. There's no bones about it. However, Mubama gave us a little bit more purpose in the front. So how do you feel that kind of went, when we made those subs? And yes, Richard, I am going to be writing headlines for the Sun now. Divine intervention is going to be the one that I'm going to sell.
Don't work for the scum. Come on, no, thank you.
No, I'm just so puns. That's it. It's just puns.
No, thank you. No, you work for anyone but the Murdoch Empire, please. Anyway, my own politics aside, with I think we looked far sharper when Mubama came on. I'm not going to say I think Benrahma did much. I think he helped us retain the possession.
He allowed that width, didn't he? He allowed us to
stretch, and
he
actually stayed wide. But I think apart from that, he had a terrible cut back to Paqueta that he just completely fluffed. There was no threat with delivery. He had one chance where it was very close to the post, but I don't think he can really take much credit from that substitution. I kind of think he helped us initiate the game plan to keep our wingers wide, which we saw get the best out of Kudus. And I think part of that was mainly that was down to the fact that Mubama actually brought pressing, physicality and pace to the attacking line.
Trafford quite early as well. He got pressed him really well, and obviously Trafford played out past him. However, it was one of those moments where it gives that little bit of impetus to players behind, because all of a sudden you can see you've got a player on the front who is compressed and means that you can all push up a bit higher and maybe capitalise on a loose clearance or a miscontrol in midfield. And I think we did try to do that more, and he allowed us to take that step up. But we are, as you say, the likes of Benrahma, obviously allowed us to keep that width to kind of stretch them. Again, it still looks a bit of a shadow of himself, and I think that's a lot with a lot of players maybe on that second string at the moment.
I think Trafford was. I don't know if I just haven't seen enough of him, or maybe Burnley fans can correct me on this, or people who've watched him more regularly, but he just looked so shaky at times today. And, we had 11 attempts, but only 3 shots on goal. And for me, I just think that's not good enough. That not when you have a shaky keeper like that. I think,
the language is harsh for some people maybe, but it's a fair point. It was laughable the way that we pressed and the way we allowed them to play out so easily. And some of that does come from Ings, unfortunately. It just doesn't have the pace in which to really kind of enable that higher press. And once Mubama came on, it helped us in relation to that. And it is a big problem that we have to address. And I think, I personally believe now that this probably could finally be the point where Moyes has to accept the likes of Mubama are an option, and they need to be utilised far more ahead of obviously Danny Ings, potentially even ahead of Antonio until he's back properly fully fit, because we don't know how well he's going to recover. And we've seen with Antonio before, when he's rushed back, he doesn't look great, and he can look laboured. So maybe now is the time to entrust more in the likes of Mubama, who has been making a lot big claims over the last year in terms of his performances for the youth level. It's done, had a couple of good cameos for us in Europe, again against lesser opposition. However, has made a chance. This is a very fair point. Why didn't Cornet come on ahead of Benny? I think there's something clearly going on there in relation to Cornet. There's clearly a disconnect there. That things are not clicking. And
I think if Cornet had a future at this club, I think we'd have seen him by now. Unless he has got a knock or something, or we're scared of him coming when he's not, coming and playing when he's not fully fit, then I just don't see a way that he gets any playing time at the moment, unless he's completely unless he's rotated into a new side. It's really
But he's not
It's
even starting in the
disappointing.
European games anymore, is he? You know, last season he started the European games. Now doesn't even get in. And
Well,
you know,
I'm also going to say something now that, you know, we constantly kind of get derided on this channel and in football Twitter in terms of Premier League proven players. And, you know, Ings and Cornet have both come in Premier League proven and they've done nothing. Now look, that's not saying that, you know, it's not a gamble to buy from abroad. The fact is that you have to buy for the system. Cornet fits the system to a degree, but obviously it's not worked out. So you just need to stick to that recipe of buying for a system and buying players who fit your mold and making sure, in the case of Cornet, you buy players who can stay fit, or, you know, they have that sort of tendency to stay fit when they're on the pitch. And it's hard, but that's scouting these days. And it's incredibly frustrating when you are reading that, you know, we should be after such and such a player or Premier League proven, and you think, yeah, but they don't fit how we play. And whether or not it's going to be a Moyes signing, whether or not, you know, it leads to the fact that he leaves at the end of the season, it's irrelevant, because if they are players who fit a system or they are goal scorers, then, you know, they're going to score goals in the league. They're going to be someone who creates problems. And even in Mikel Antonio's case, you know, they might not get 20 goals a season. They might not be, you know, the top performers week in, week out, but they'll cause you problems. And that's invaluable. But we need to make sure that we channel towards that more, as opposed to just Prem proven as such.
Yeah, exactly. And we've seen today, again, we're not going to say he's going to go on and be a barnstormer for it here on out and every other game. But, you know, Mubama isn't Premier League proven. He came on from our youth team. He's an unknown quantity, essentially. It's almost like buying a player from an unknown league and bringing him in. He made an impact, and that's what you need from your subs. And he did that. He came on, he made an impact, and he made, you know, a point as such that he maybe is ready to be given a little bit more kind of option. And what do you kind of make of this? Do you think that if Mubama now after, or that obviously this cameo, I know his goal hasn't been given to him, however, he's very much a main factor in it. Do you think if he's not used from here on out, so say, you know, Bowen comes in, just put Bowen straight up top and we kind of play exactly the same way, do you think that's going to frustrate fans, or do you just think that fans will just accept it and just kind of ignore it because obviously it's Bowen and we know how much we miss Bowen today? And, you know,
I think if it's Bowen doesn't offer the physicality, but he offers the work rate and the pressing and the pace. So, you know, I wouldn't have a problem with Bowen coming back in. He's the most informed goal scorer in the league, and definitely in our side at the moment. So I think it's not a case of Bowen, it's a case of Ings, and it's a case of, has he done enough to come in and, you know, be the next man, be the striker who either leads the line while Bowen's got a knock, or has he done enough to show that after 70, 60 minutes like today, he can come on? And I think he has, just from that cameo, because that's how bad and ineffective I think Danny Ings was and has been across this season, is that I genuinely think that small cameo has done enough to justify going for him again over Danny Ings.
Yeah, and it also kind of throws out, you know, comments from Moyes Ford that we're constantly protecting him, we really like him, and essentially presenting the idea that he's not ready and he's far from being in a position. However, you've played a player who you believe is consistently ready in Ings. And again, I know we keep going in two-footed in Ings, but let's be honest, he was terrible, and we're going to critique the play and compare it to how someone else came on and made minutes. You've got a proven known quantity, and he has consistently failed to kind of do anything. I think they said he's failed to score in 25 appearances for West Ham.
Well, look. I mean, Freddie Sears wasn't ready, and he wasn't good enough for this level, but he still scored goals because he pressed and he worked. Yeah. But I'm not saying that Mubama is Freddie Sears. But the point stands that if a player has got the confidence and the work rate to fit the system, play him. Why are you playing Danny Ings? So I think for me, I think it would just be a case of the frustrations of fans will come to boil if, you know, this the attitude isn't rewarded, and I think that's the problem.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think that's the problem, isn't it? And you know, that goal came from James Ward-Prowse making a quality pass. You know, the player we said largely non-existent throughout most of the game. He made an absolute quality pass into Kudus, who once again burned the fullback. Once, you know, when he's given these opportunities to get one-on-one and play one-on-one against a player, he is really dangerous. And it was a great whipped cross in with his right foot. You know, we know Mubama's goal won't be given to him. We will say it as Mubama's goal because we want the goal to be credited, but obviously it was an own goal because that movement he made is what has obviously then forced, you know, that opportunity, forced the deflection off the defender to turn it into his own net. And it's just, that's what I think is frustrating, is that when these individuals are given the ball and given the opportunity, we can make things happen. I think this is probably something that we've said so many times. We are playing those moments, and I think we're too much of a moments team sometimes, and we don't have those set patterns enough to unlock teams when we have possession, because we're so concentrated on how do we keep it tight, how do we keep a team out, and how do we exploit at set pieces that maybe we don't necessarily focus enough on how do we break down and create those passing angles enough in games.
Well,
that's kind of how I feel sometimes.
I think it says a lot that Burnley had 50.8% of the possession today, and we had 49.2%. And I would say that a large amount of that came from that second half spell. It's a case of we just seem to not really expose the width and the vulnerability of their goalkeeper, of their defense, but their goalkeeper as well. You know, we didn't work the keeper much. We had, as I said, we had 11 attempts. We only had 3 shots on goal. And when you're looking at Trafford and how shaky he was at times today, you have to wonder why we didn't work him more. And I think, as I said, the changes that we made were enough to beat Burnley. But if we go to a side, you know, we're now 4 points above Chelsea.
Would it be good enough to make the difference against Palace?
Exactly.
That's our next game. You know, would that be the difference? How do we make those changes and continue to play in the same fashion? Probably not.
No.
You know, what I do find funny though is poor Palon Dawson turned the game off after 80 minutes. I don't blame him. I was close to it as well. But it's just how typical West Ham is it that we're all used to seeing, you know, at 80 minutes in, 1-0 down, we're not coming back in and to get the 2 goals. It's just so West Ham to have had that. And, you know, and in fairness, Palon Dawson, you know, big Moyes advocate and fan, but, you know, conceding his individual brilliance that has won us the game, and that's not sustainable. And it's true, that's the concern. It's if we consistently have to rely on those individuals for those moments of class, those moments of quality, how can we have
those? That's the exact issue with the lack of quality we have in the squad in terms of, you know, standout quality. We don't have a standout quality 11. We have members of that 11 who are standout quality. And, you know, the equaliser that Kudus got against Newcastle, a moment of quality. And that's one as a point. We have, you know, the some of the goals that Paqueta scored. Moments of quality will get so far, but it's a case of we need to make sure that we're recruiting a quality 11 as opposed to just, you know, a few quality players here and there. And it's very hard to do when we've got players, with all due respect to Danny Ings and Fornals, who, you know, I love. I think he's quality. I think he has got enough quality, but he just doesn't suit how we play at times. And it's going forward, that's how we need to address things. And I'm not saying that we need to do that because of David Moyes. We need to do that because of the side that we want to become and the level we want to be playing at.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And it's so frustrating that, you know, something that we mentioned was having that dynamic player midfield who can bring the ball out and, you know, kind of drive at the heart of a team. We saw that at times with Sander Berge, and also with some of his passing. We don't have that. And that's really what has kind of impacted us. And yeah, well, I still agree. Quality is expensive. It's also inexpensive if you are smart. Just look at Brighton. If you are smart with what you do, quality is not expensive. It's expensive then for another club if they want to then bring it into their club, but it's not. It can be done inexpensively. You just
look at Leverkusen. Look at what Leverkusen are doing this year. You know, they got Boniface for what, 18 million euros, a player that we've been, you know, championing. I've put in a thread about West Ham on Babbling, like what, a year and a half ago. It's these players that we should be looking at. It's not expensive. It's not expensive to do that. You just have to find quality players who fit the system. Grimaldo, who was a free agent at left back and can play left wing, he's now got the most goals from outside the area in Europe of any player, and he was injured for a period as well. So he was a free agent. So I'm sorry if you're telling me that we couldn't have competed and got Grimaldo with Leverkusen. I disagree. You know, I do know they have the Champions League football, but they let a player go to Villa, and if, you know, we're looking to compete, we need to be on that sort of wavelength too, at least offering these players the options. So I disagree in terms of the quality is expensive. It just has to be scouted, and that's the issue that we have. Like, hopefully Steichen will sort that and we can get some players in January, but it's just a case of us doing it the right way, because I tweeted out in the week that if we, I know it sounds a bit football managery, but if we were to go to Chelsea and say we want Maatsen, offer you, he's in the last 6 months of his contract, we'll give you £15 million. Offer them £15 million. We've got a young homegrown player who can play left back, left wing. Then you've also got, you know, Girassi, who is on an €18 million release clause. You go to Stuttgart and you offer that, and you offer him the wages that he wants. Then you've got the option of loan players who are available. So you could easily go out and get Ekatike or Werner, and you can do that. You massively added across the squad and added quality. Now, one or two of them may not work out, but you still address problem areas. You've addressed the forward area, you've addressed the wing area, and you've also addressed a homegrown quota. So there's so much to be done. It doesn't have to all be expensive. It might be a £40 million window, but it's the sort of thing that going forward, you know, you can address a little bit of the budget. You can do things to kind of shuffle the numbers about. Hopefully you can sell someone, I wonder who it could be, to bring in some form of money and way to balance the books. But it'd just be a case of doing it right. You don't have to do it in a way that's expensive. We don't need to do another Haller where we go out and go, oh, this is our £40 million striker. We just have to be smart. Yeah,
exactly. I think the marquee thing is something that's distracted us as fans, and we're all guilty of it. We all love a bit of a marquee signing, and it's definitely distracted our club for a long period, because it's almost every year it's been a consistent, oh look, we've done our budget, we've done our budget. So it's one of those things where, you know, it's really difficult in that sometimes you want to chase that. And obviously one of those marquee signings for us, obviously, has been Kudus, who put in an absolute quality delivery once again. Someone who's completely oblivious for pretty much the entire 90 minutes then comes up and gets the winner. Soucek has done that now 2 weeks in a row, where he's been almost oblivious for a majority of the game and then has gone and got the winner. Obviously, in not a Forest game, he could have ended up with a hat-trick, in all fairness to him. In that second half, he was much better. But two times round, you know, he's actually gone and got us the winner for doing arguably what Soucek things in that, getting in the box when we need him to be there. And when he can get in the area, we know he's a quality finisher, and it was a blinding finish. In fairness, you know,
he didn't have to
game,
too much. He just had to steer it in. That was how good the ball was from Kudus. And you know, I've said it time and time again. Soucek is a blunt instrument, and you know, I'm not going to pretend that I'm not going to say that detracts anything from his game. You know, I'm not using that as a disrespectful thing towards him, but he will give you, you know, someone who's going to throw everything at it. He's going to get his foot on the end of things. He's going to get his head on the end of things, and he's going to beat his man in the air. And that's exactly what he did. You know, he got his foot on the end of it and he just directed it in. That's blunt instrument to the max, because what else are we doing if we're not, you know, if we're not delivering dangerous balls into the area? We're not going to get the best out of him. And we saw the worst of him in terms of his actual overall play in the central midfield. And we actually put in a quality ball, you know, probably the only moment of real quality after. They came after what, the 90 minutes, the 80th minute. But it all came from using the fact that we need to actually draw on the physicality. We need to draw on the fact that this system works. It's just using the blunt instruments to do so.
Well, it's the thing that we talked about in the preview, that if you got the likes of Soucek, you've got to get him in the areas where he can be effective, and you've got to utilise set pieces and put pressure on. We talked about the fact that we arguably are far physically a bigger team and stronger team than Burnley, so we had to do that. So, you know, by pushing up there and getting him in the area, you know, we got the win. And it's funny that we sit there, we criticise Soucek, and at the same time we have to praise him as well, because he's gone and got us the victory, and for making the right move at the right time. It's just frustrating that it's something in a moment, or a player playing in a moment, and the majority of the game maybe we're not getting a full kind of contribution out of him in the game. Maybe that helps us have a much easier time.
Criticism's a funny thing, because, you know, I mean, I'm probably one of the easiest targets at it, to kind of say, like, you know, armchair, whatever, you know, all that kind of stuff. Guy on the internet saying, "Oh, you could do this," but it's the case of, like, when you criticize someone, you're doing it for a reason that's evidence-based. You're doing it based on the performance they've given. We're not just sat here going, "Oh, I don't like Danny Ings because blah blah blah." Like, you know, Danny Ings is a fantastic striker in a system that works for him. I'm happy to say that, but he's not having the best time at West Ham. However, counterpoint, you know, I love Soucek because he's a blunt instrument. However, sometimes he is absolutely diabolical. It doesn't mean that I don't love him, but there is criticism available there. That doesn't just mean you're dogpiling onto someone, you're not being very nice. It just means you're assessing the performance. And I think sometimes football's such a tribal thing that people get so defensive over their favourites or over, you know, their players, that they kind of just refuse to acknowledge that. And you know, that's not a bad thing. It just means that every so often you have to go, you know, someone did this right, but they were rubbish earlier. And
well, the two things can coexist, you know, at the same time. You know, like when we talked about last season, we were terrible in the league, yet we were fantastic in Europe. You know, the two things coexist together. You can be unhappy about our Premier League performance and criticise the manager in that respect, but you can also be ecstatic about what we did in Europe and praise the manager to high heavens about that, because two things can coexist with one, you know, at the same time. It's just sometimes people don't, as you say, the tribalism of football can sometimes mean that you sit within one camp or the other, and to acknowledge that there maybe are coexisting kind of things that contradict each other don't help your argument.
You know, it's the Moyes in, Moyes out side of things, where it's like, you know, we were dog waste for you know, the 60 minutes, and we can't defend that. You know, I'm not sat here to defend David Moyes. It's a case that, you know, we were terrible for until Mubama came on, and until players stepped up to the mark and performed. And you have to give credit where it's due. The changes changed the game, and we nicked it at the last. That's one of the most un-West Ham things that we tend to do. But it has to be on a fair balance. And, Moyes does deserve a bit of credit for that change.
You'll say there's criticism for how we set up and how we played. This is
exactly. But, I think I'm not gonna pretend to be positive about today, because I do think that, as I said, that first kind of 62 minutes or whatever, it was just so bad. It was indefensible against the worst side in the league. And, sorry, Burnley. I like Vincent Kompany. I don't like Burnley. I'm not going to paraphrase the In-Betweeners movie, but it's just a case that, the man of the match today was probably my girlfriend, because she was sat there while I was just going, oh God, it's awful, it's all terrible, and like until 80 minutes in, and yeah, I feel like I've been through the mill of it today, because we were terrible, and yet somehow we've come out of it with 3 points.
No, yeah, it's true, and it was absolutely turgid for a good 80 minutes, and it is just poor. We don't seem to have any real kind of idea what we want to do with the ball. I think a lot of what kind of happened today was also a lot down to Burnley starting to crumble under the pressure as well. I think that played a major factor, and once we got the equaliser, I felt that maybe the game was only going to go in one direction, because the pressure was starting to get to them. And, having not won a game at home all season is a problem. And, what would I do? Well, first off, I probably would change our midfield. It's, one of the problems is that we struggle in that midfield area. We've got to do something on that left-hand side. We've either got to commit to Ben Rama, or we've got to commit to even Kudus or Bowen playing like that. I know we won't play Bowen. I think most likely what we will do, or what we probably should do, is keep Bowen on the right-hand side, put Mubama up top, then maybe put Paqueta in behind Mubama, and then obviously you got Kudus on that left-hand side. Now that three behind Mubama have enough intelligence and enough wherewithal about them to be able to rotate and switch positions. If we can work in that kind of way, we're going to get so much out of them. The problem then comes in that midfield kind of double pivot, because obviously you got Alvarez, who I think is probably going to be the mainstay. However, Ward-Prowse doesn't seem to do as well when he sits deep. Soucek has done better, but then also you're asking a lot of Paqueta in which to kind of rotate. But again, he's an intelligent player. Personally, I think that you have to play with an intelligent front four that can change. Then it's just that midfield too. I think had we gone for Fofana earlier in the season, him and also Alvarez, I think then would have been a brilliant double pivot to have had. Then you have the luxury of being able to bring in Ward-Prowse, to bring in Soucek in games to help us through. And again, it's that rotation, because different teams, different games need different things. But I do think that we've got to move away from some of these square peg things. The problem is, what I've also said does have some square pegs, because I'm talking about maybe Kudus having to go on the left wing in which to accommodate him, unless you go for a bit of a kind of 4-2-2-2 situation is the only other way that you can kind of do it. But it's complicated, because Moyes has a way he wants to play. What we want isn't necessarily what we're going to see. One of the things that we did want to see today was Mubama come on. He did. He made an impact and put us on the path to trying to get the winner, which we eventually did. So as much as I am not happy with the majority of the game today and how Moyes set us up and how we were, I've got to credit the fact that those changes made an impact, whether that's down to him and his decision, or that his approach he wanted those players to take, or whether those players taking upon themselves to do it is another matter. And again, people can debate what that is. But one thing that we can say for sure is that Kudus today really saved our bacon. If it wasn't for those two crosses, one with his right foot and one with his left foot, I think we would be having a far more agitated conversation today, as opposed to one where it's just mild agitation followed by, yeah, look, I have to admit we got the win, and I have to kind of accept that.
No, I'm not going to sit here and make excuses for Moyes, because it was unacceptable today, and defending has been unacceptable for a long time. Like it's been turgid this pretty much the whole season, apart from the Chelsea game. Maybe I thought where we defended quite well. It has been really poor defending for someone who's meant to be a defensive coach, and that's very frustrating. You know, for 60 minutes, I was sitting there thinking, you know, oh, maybe this is just going to be a full Moyes outside, like Twitter explosion and all that kind of thing. And you know, I wasn't looking forward to talking about the match. And to be honest, even after that kind of performance, I feel like I've been through the ringer. It's very hard to praise a manager when that sort of thing happens. So I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to say the change was good. However, if you couldn't see that change was needed, like that Mubama needed to start that game, that makes me worried. And I think I will be a lot harder next week on him if he does not start Mubama. If he starts Ings again, then I think that is just that's inexcusable. I don't understand any sort of mindset there. So it's a case of very happy that we nicked it at the last. However, there are cracks appearing, and if we are gonna look to get anything from Palace with their pace and skill on the ball, you know, the sort of physicality that they have as well at the back, you know, Anderson has shown time and time again that he's pocketed Mikel Antonio's physicality. So, you know, if we can get anything from the Crystal Palace game, there does need to be a change. And that's only going to come from one person, you know, to start us proper.
No, agree. You know, starts with the manager. Players obviously then have to do the business on the pitch, but the manager sets the tone, puts the team out, and I think the tone was completely wrong for 80 minutes of today. Yeah, it was inexcusable for 80 minutes to perform as we did. We got the result in the end, which is a positive, but it's not a positive that I'm going to be kind of shouting from the heavens. Yeah. And for me, if ever you've seen it, watch Ian Holloway describing a terrible win when he was at QPR and compares it to going out on a night out. If you've not watched it, go onto YouTube. It is one of the funniest videos you'll watch for the night. It's well worth it just for that. But just to wrap this up, it was a god-awful performance. Young Mubama set us on the way in which to get us out of trouble. Kudus had 2 moments of quality. Soucek again, anonymous, but second week in a row has bagged the winner. And we're currently sitting in 9th comfortably, 1 point off of Man United.
Chelsea.
Exactly, 1 point behind Man United. And I think only a couple of points behind Brighton, who are, you know, also we talked about as having a good season. So there are some positives. It's clutching at straws, but there are some limited positives. I'm not going to ask who man of the match is because, to be honest, I don't think
it's my girlfriend. You know, putting up with me complaining, effing and blinding screens.
Well, there you go.
So long.
Mrs. takes the mantle of person of the match, not man of the match. Let's be politically correct. Person of the match. Oh, yeah. And yeah, let's hope come the Palace game we have a much better performance. Everyone in the comments, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you everyone for watching. Really appreciate it. If you like the video, please do like, please do subscribe, all of those things. If I don't say it, Frankie will get annoyed at us. So if you can do those things, that'd be amazing. But yeah, hopefully guys, in the next game, we'll see a better performance. We certainly deserve it. We certainly need to have a hell of a lot more intensity in our play. So until next time, everyone, thank you for joining. Thanks for watching. And Sloth, one last thing to do, and that is come on, you irons.